Fortunately, we know some of you. And so I'm Dorothy. Jim, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Jim Donahue. Hi, everybody.
We are partners in a company called Development Dynamics. And we basically help folks become much better at business development through a variety of ways. And today, we are really, since we are under the circumstances of social distancing, we have found a lot of our clients have been struggling with how do you grow your network? How do you become more impactful, develop a better rapport, go deeper in your relationships in times of self-isolation? That's really what we're going to talk about today. And with that, Jim, I'm going to let you start.
Sure. So as Dorothy's mentioned, our goal for today is really to kind of share some stories and some strategies of folks that we've had the opportunity to work with, what we've seen be successful. And I would say one of the things that is very common is that people are taking this time to reevaluate their business development plan. And that doesn't mean that things are going poorly, so they need a new plan. It doesn't mean that things are going great and they need a new plan. It's all of the above, right? So, right, if you are having success currently, I think a lot of our clients are looking at the skills, the networks, the tasks that they've undertaken to get them to this point and thinking, is that really going to get me to the same place in the future when the world doesn't look the same? And if things are not going so well, a lot of our clients are taking really, I think, very positive steps towards some new initiatives and new tasks, and really taking the time to reevaluate how they want to move their business development efforts forward. And we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about networks as we go through this. And certainly we welcome your questions as we go through. And, when you think about reevaluating, there's a whole bunch of categories, and I'm not going to cover every single bullet on this slide. But right, the cornerstone of your plan, your business development efforts, is really your networks. So when we think about networks with clients, what we're thinking about and the way our clients are thinking about it is not just clients and not just suppliers, but family, friends, connectors, media resources, industry experts, and especially and this is often overlooked, is your network inside of your organization, right? So who else inside of your company, who else inside of your firm do you know, and do you know who they know? And is there an opportunity for you to take time now to research that and get to know more about the people that you work closely with? We've seen a number of examples where in the folks that we work with, our clients who say, well, gee, actually, I just started a new project, and that project came through, right, my colleague who didn't even know that I knew something about the cannabis industry or something like that. So we're seeing all sorts of those things. I
was just going to say, the other thing to kind of keep in mind is really, it's one thing to have the importance of having a diverse network, but the whole idea of is what is the point of having this network and what is this network there for? And so Jim and I think it's really, really important that everything that kind of guides you, and it doesn't matter whether you're an entrepreneur who's serving specific clients or customers, or whether you're an attorney, or whether you're an accountant, or you're a wealth manager. The idea is the more diverse your network is, the more able you are to help a variety of people. And people who are rainmakers and people who are very, very good at developing business are very, very good at solving a multitude of problems. And whether it's they're solving the problem or they are connecting the best resource to the person who has the problem, that's really what they do. And so if your focus is not really on selling anything, but really on thinking in terms of how can I solve more problems and how can I help more people solve those problems more efficiently, and you kind of look at your network and you think about how can I be helpful to everyone in my network and add value. And if you look through every relationship you have and you're thinking about, am I adding value to that relationship? And that's the question that you ask first, rather than the vice versa, which a lot of people do, is what is that relationship doing for me? We feel that it really kind of changes what your actions that you're then going to take.
There's a book that we would recommend to you called Give and Take by a guy named Adam Grant. And I would think Dorothy would agree that if we were to encapsulate sort of our philosophy and what we've seen be successful with our clients in business development, it's contained in that book. It's really about looking first for how you can be helpful for other people, as Dorothy was saying. So if you, I think we're going to be sharing this deck, and we're happy to share the book title and author, but it's Give and Take by Adam Grant. It's a terrific book. The other couple things that people are taking the time now to do is really build effective habits, right? One of the disadvantages that that we're seeing now in this time of COVID-19 is that right, there's not as much travel. There's not, like, kids aren't playing sports. People don't have places to go at night, right? The positive side of that is that it's for a lot of folks, it's easier to allocate your time in a way that helps you build a habit, right? And that one of the things we're seeing be very successful is being more systematic in terms of the time you allocate to business development. Certainly with entrepreneurs, you probably wear lots of different hats. So sometimes you're the chief technology officer, sometimes you're the chief financial officer, sometimes you're the chief business development officer. So not everybody has business development as the job they do full time. So one of the things that we hear a lot is, how do I make the time to do that? And one of the benefits that we're seeing now is that, right, there is some more free time, and it's easier to build in a habit around business development activity, and really making sure that you are spending time, whether it's posting on social media, emailing, calling, hosting Zoom meetings like this, right? That it's easier to build those kinds of habits. And really what that leads into is the ROI piece, right? And what we're seeing is people taking the time to assess and think about what really makes successful business development activity for them. Where are they getting their biggest bang for their buck? And is that going to be sustainable over time?
And what is this current environment doing to limit? If you are someone who develops a lot of contacts at big conferences, obviously we're not going to have these big conferences. If that is how you depend on furthering your brand, you're really going to have to find a different way to engage with either customers or engage with potential venture capitalists and investors, or engage with clients and other COIs and referral sources. And really taking stock. Now is a great time. I think we've all heard it. It's almost a cliche now, but with things slowing down, things are quiet. We're somewhat quiet, as busy as we might be doing with homeschooling and work and everything else managing. It is also a great time for reflection and really asking yourself, what are my inherent strengths, which is our next slide. What are my inherent weaknesses? What are external factors that are going to be permanent or that might be temporary? But what are those other factors, internal and external, that really could impact what I'm doing? And what do I need to do to remediate those? And so we always think it's a good idea. This is really a personal SWOT activity. The questions might change for any individual person. So in a general sense, we think these are very good questions for many of you to think about. If you're someone who's an introvert who hates to talk on the phone and hates to be on a Zoom, this could be a really challenging time for you. But thinking about, I'll let Jim kind of go through this slide in more detail. But
yeah, just to piggyback on Dorothy's, I mean, one of the things that we've certainly seen is, if you are uncomfortable on a video call now, you got to get over that, right? Everybody needs a shave. Everybody needs a haircut, right? There's kids in the background and dogs barking, and like, that's just not a big deal. You might not have the neatest background, on your Zoom call, but right, being on video and having a visual to share with your relationships is almost, it's a must-have. So if you're uncomfortable with that, do whatever you can to get yourself comfortable, because that's probably among the most important things that we've heard back from our clients around what is keeping their relationships and helping them build relationships around business development activity. I won't, as I said, we're going to share these, so I'm not going to go through each one of these. But the one that I wanted to kind of focus on is, right, taking the time to think about, on the strength side, what really distinguishes you from your competition. I think in this time of COVID-19, right, it's really shining a light on what makes you different and what makes you special, and why do people count on you to do the thing that you do. And right, it's bringing that into more relief, and that's a very positive thing, right, because it's going to help you. And what we've seen in our clients, it really helps them get clarity around what's the value, what's the real value that I'm adding here, and how do I capitalize further on that? How do I use that knowledge to help me gain more clients, gain more relationship, gain more referral resources, things like that, because that is such a huge thing to be able to say, this is really what makes me different. And COVID is helping a lot of our clients, despite all the difficulties that are coming with that. It really is helping a lot of our clients discover that in a very positive way.
I was going to say, on the weaknesses side, one of the important things is that if you had a lack of rapport with people in your network, like a personal rapport with them prior to COVID, this is obviously making it more challenging. And so really taking stock, do I have the types of personal relationships with my professional relationships that I need to have to be as impactful as I should be? Do I have the relationships with my professional associations on a personal level that I really need to have to be impactful? And if I don't, and if the answer is I don't, what are things that I can do now? And we are going to talk about some of those strategies, but it's really important to be able to prioritize and assess, who do I have those relationships with, and who do I not? And what am I going to do in order to develop that rapport?
So in a SWOT, right, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, one of the things that we kind of hear back from clients is around opportunities, right? And that certainly one of the things that is happening today, and this call, I think, is really evidence of that, is that people are open to connecting, maybe more so than they have been otherwise, right? Because they're searching for connections. And we've heard time and time again from clients about stories where they said, yeah, I reached out to this person I went to law school with, and I hadn't really talked to them in 10 years, but guess what? They were so happy to hear from me. And we talked for an hour, and guess what? There's new work that we can do for them. Or, hey, here's a person that I knew from 5 years ago. They're a former colleague, and their business needs what my business needs now, what my business provides now. And I just happened to reach out to them. Or, hey, here's a loan officer at a bank that I haven't talked to since high school, right? 10, 20, 30 years before, but they were a PPP loan provider, and I was able to connect with them, and they were able to help my business out. There's so much more openness to connect now. That's a tremendous opportunity in the market today. And a lot of it isn't just focusing on, as Dorothy said, right? Focusing on what you can get out of it, but how can you help other people through the relationships that you have and the openness that people are willing to provide you. And on the threat side, right, is social distancing going to impact your business? Probably. If all of your business development activity comes from conferences and face-to-face meetings, trade shows, things like that, it's going to be potentially a while, right, before those things come back into play as good business development sources, business development lead sources. So, right, having a clear understanding of that, having a plan, and recognizing that is an existential threat potentially to your business development pipeline, right? You're going to find ways around it. So for example, a client of ours hosted his own industry event, right? The association that ran the event just wasn't having it. They canceled their summertime, regional get-togethers. So he went to the previous year's attendee list, emailed everybody and said, look, I'll set it up. I'll set up all the panels. I'll come up with the topics. If you guys want to come on, great, I'll host it all. And they did it in a one-day Zoom session outside of the association, and it worked really well. And he was tremendously happy, not only with the business development activity that came out of it, but the reputational boost that he got for thinking creatively about that kind of work.
The other thing is, I think too, in times, I think people are feeling vulnerable, and I think it's important, with your relationships have to be genuine. I think being vulnerable and being open has never been more important. And whether it's how you need help and how you can offer help to other people, I think how we converse and how we have conversations with people, it's really important to be real. Never been more important to be real. So when we think about the impact of COVID, going, kind of extending that a bit on our personal SWOTs and what we're doing, what we're not doing, as Jim said, right now there's in some ways there's less time, there's no opportunity to network in person. But again, the flip side of that is it's much easier to reach people inefficiently. We don't have to drive 2 hours to go to an event or drive an hour up and an hour back to meet someone for cocktails. And be home for dinner, or be home with kids or homework, or we're home already. And so it's just easier to reach people in an efficient way. You can go later without leaving your home and still take care of what you need to do at home. So there's just more opportunity and more time in the day. It's just different hours than maybe, the way you were used to before. You might be less motivated because of what's going on in the world right now. These are difficult times. But because of those difficult times, people are much more willing to connect. People are more vulnerable. People really do need to feel that extra connection. And so that availability, accessibility is just much more prevalent than it would be or was 4 months ago. You might have less to offer in the current climate if you're not asking yourself those questions. What expertise do we need, or what relationships, or what do we need to do? There are other areas. There's so many areas of opportunity right now in business that clients really need help with. And it's up to you to ask the right questions to figure out what those people need. But there is definitely more opportunity. You just might have to really pivot. And it will be difficult to pivot unless you're open to change, you're flexible, and you're asking those questions of what the people in your network really need. Obviously, financially, we're in challenging times. In any given market, in terms of whether clients are not financially stable themselves, or whether their clients are holding on to cash, and so therefore they don't have discretionary income. There are lots of things that you can offer and that you can do that don't cost money, that don't take a lot of time. And so we encourage all of you to think about, use some of this time to get creative and think about those things as budgets shift, expectations shift, and just access to cash shifts. There are lots of things that all of us can do to be more impactful within our networks and our client bases.
Because I think that things will change, right? So the point of that last one is, right, what can you do now to help yourself down the road, as Dorothy was saying, as things become more, if budgets are tight today, there are things that you can provide to your clients, to your relationships, that don't take a lot of money, but can be strategically helpful down the road.
We tell everyone, the circles that you create in your 20s and 30s. Many of the relationships that Jim and I now have the pleasure of, the people that we work with were people that we met when we were in our 20s and 30s, and we all grew up together. So it is, though if you're older, it's never too late ever. You just might have a much shorter runway to further those relationships. But certainly if you are on the younger side of that in your 20s and 30s, do it now. Don't be put off by all the decision makers, the CEOs, or the people who are running the private equity firms or the VCs. I'm too junior. It's always a multiple prong approach, and you still have to find ways to connect and be impactful. But the thing that's going to be the most sustaining for you is to plant those seeds and develop those relationships now, wherever you are, and develop it with your peers so that you do grow up together. Jim and I look at the networks of rainmakers. Our philosophy really is if we want people to act like a rainmaker, it's probably really good to study a rainmaker. And so we look at rainmakers, and they have very, very, very diverse networks. And that's why they're able to do the magic that they do, because they know a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life. And really, a rainmaker is very much and often a matchmaker. They're connecting. That's one of the attributes of a rainmaker. They're connecting different people to help solve problems. And so, as we said earlier in the presentation, the more of those people that you know, not only are you more interesting, but you're certainly more able to help solve a lot of problems. And so sometimes, you know, it's really, really important, and we're going to get into how you evaluate your network. But we hear, you know, we'll have people kind of go through this exercise of who they know. And what's interesting about the times of social isolation and COVID, when we first start working with people and we have them evaluate their networks, and it's who did I go to law school with, or who did I go to business school with, who did I go to college with, who are my social neighbors, do I sit on any boards, who are other people that sit on those boards, who's my wealth advisor, who was my divorce attorney, who are some bankers. And so this list of all these people, we have them kind of put in buckets. And then, you know, sometimes people will say, well, I really want to work with middle market manufacturers in the food and beverage industry. And then they realize that they really don't have any referral sources in the food and beverage industry in the middle market, which is a real, you know, it's a real problem. So part of hopefully kind of when you guys all leave this exercise today or this presentation, one of the things that we hope you'll do, if it's, I need to get to know more venture capitalists in order to forward my new venture. How do I get to those venture capitalists? Who do I already know that might know some of those venture capitalists? And how can I leverage that relationship perhaps? Are there things that I can do to help those people too in that process as I work a path to develop those other relationships in those other areas? But again, the key is, when you look, once you take the time to kind of write it down and identify who are those top relationships in your network, it's really hard not to have it glaring in your face, who am I missing? You know, sometimes we have, you know, corporate attorneys who are missing accountant relationships, or headhunters, or if you're a labor and employment lawyer, maybe you're missing the folks that serve. So it's really important, if you're focused on certain segments within business, who are the people that serve those other segments? Who are other vendors? Who are other trusted advisors that are serving the same types of companies that you want to look at? And it could be as creative as, we had a client who serves a lot of entrepreneurs. And so for him, his best referral source was the owner of the BMW dealership in his town, because all of the entrepreneurs who were successful buy all of their BMWs from that dealership. So it wasn't your traditional, I need a lawyer, an accountant, insurance broker. Be creative. Think about those people that serve the people that you want to get to.
And I think it's funny because a lot of times we with clients have to define what we mean by, do you know somebody? And saying, yeah, I know Dorothy, she's at the BMW dealership. Well, do you know where Dorothy went to school? Do you know where Dorothy worked before she went to the BMW dealership? Do you know where she wants to work next? Do you know who Dorothy's clients are? Who's Dorothy's accountant, right? Does Dorothy want to own the BMW dealership? Is she talking to private equity people, right? Saying you know somebody is often much more than just knowing their name and, right, oh yeah, she lives down the street from me. You got to really get to know them and take the time to do that. Oops.
So we have them, mapping them out, as Jim said, to really know them. You really kind of have to know them, do the research, how close are they to you? How well do you know them? How deep is your relationship? Are they someone that's going to stand up for you and introduce you to someone proudly, or are they just kind of a neutral person? Are they someone that's actually a detractor, and they're someone that you really have to be careful of? What do they do? Where do they work? If it's personal, a lot of times we'll have, if you're in the professional services industry and you have a lot of friends and you're having difficulty making that transition from a personal relationship to a professional one, there's all different kinds of strategies in how to do that. But first, you really kind of have to understand, where do they work? What do they do? Who would be helpful for them to meet, and think about what are those ways? And what kind of research do you need to do? In the terms, if you have a professional relationship and you need to make it more personal in order to forward that professional relationship, same thing. You need to know about their personal lives. You have to know what their problems are, what the problems are in their industry and their enterprises. And you really also have to know, who do they know already? Who would be helpful for them to know? Are they someone who's really well connected? Sometimes we have personal relationships that we feel very awkward about ever asking them directly to hire us, because it would be too much pressure on the relationship. There's a fear there. But maybe that person, you're never going to ask them to hire you, but maybe that person is really well connected in your community or in the industry that you're focusing on. And maybe that person can help introduce you and make connections to lots of other people. So in order to even be able to decide what actions you're going to take, you really have to kind of gather some information on each one of those contacts that you have in your network. We use LinkedIn a lot. Jim, you talk about LinkedIn because it's absolutely your favorite tool.
Well, it's a tremendous resource. I'm going to guess and hope that everybody on this call is on LinkedIn and uses it a lot. And if you, Dorothy and I own no stock in LinkedIn, but we probably should, because that Sales Navigator and some of the extra tools that you can get in LinkedIn are well worth the money.
Yeah, and it's not to post stuff. We're not, there's some coaches that recommend constantly that's not our thing. But what it is great, when Jim and I started out in our respective industries, if we needed to learn about lawyers, for instance, we had to look up some big book, Martindale Hubbell book, and the information could have been stale, months before we ever saw it. LinkedIn provides an enormous amount of information about people, what they care about, the types of articles they're interested in, groups they follow, who they're connected to, who might not be connected to them that might be helpful. So there's a lot of information to gain from using tools like LinkedIn.
And it's a really key spot to go to figure out how you can be helpful to somebody. That if you see, hey, one of my contacts happens to know lots of people in private equity or venture capital, and they don't know somebody that I know, well, is that an introduction that I should offer to them? Can I introduce you to somebody who's going to be helpful to you? And you'll be able to see a lot of that through LinkedIn.
We're not going to spend too much. This whole prioritizing, like that, after you do the, after you're identifying, the next thing, you want to kind of prioritize who are the most important people that I need to be talking to more frequently than less frequently. And then how often, in what way. Different people like to communicate in different ways. There's different types of touches. If each touch requires 10 to 12, if each contact might require 10 or 12 touches in order to get a meaningful opportunity out of it, what are those touches going to be? How am I going to engage with this person, especially in times of social distancing? And it doesn't have to just be work related. If I know them, if I'm asking them the right questions, if their business is frozen right now, and they're spending a lot of time cooking with their kids, is there, maybe there's something that I can do for them on a personal level that's going to be meaningful for them, and that is a meaningful touch point. But you have to really have a strategy, almost a mini plan for each one of your contacts of how you're going to engage with them. So the big point, the point of why we're all meeting today, what could you be doing right now during isolation? Definitely, Jim and I are big believers in first you kind of figure out, you know, what do I need to be doing? What are my strengths, weaknesses? What are the threats out there? Who do I know is next? And that identifying everyone, those right relationships in your network is really, really key. So it takes a great deal of time to do it and to do it well. But it is key to success in business development. Thinking about, creatively, in place of conferences and lunches and breakfasts and dinners. Jim one day sent lunch over to a group of people, different people in different locations that they were gonna join on a Zoom call together, doing a wine tasting, sending them. At this point, obviously, there's a lot of noise with COVID updates and alerts, so you never want to just send, some blanket email to everyone in your network. But if you're able, because you know enough about your target or client's enterprise, and you're able to extrapolate that information with a personal note and send it to them, or make an introduction, even more importantly, to someone that would be helpful to them, those are really important touch strategies to think about. The key is that it has to be personal. It is about them. It is not about you. It's not about selling them your wares and talking about what you do. It's really more about really figuring out how you can add value to them.
And the only other thing I would add to that is that this isn't a 1, 2, 3, 4 stop kind of process. Obviously, this is the intention here is that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, cycle back, right? Rinse and repeat kind of a process that, right? The most meaningful relationships that you have aren't one-time relationships. They are sustained over time and with creative and thoughtful and helpful kinds of outreach, so that people know they can count on you and they rely on you, whether that is as a connector, as a provider, right, as a client, a customer, right? Whatever that is, it's important to take the time to build a recurring strategy for how to keep in touch with the people who are important to you.
We actually have a question in the chat from Tracy. Is there a certain number of contacts that you should focus on?
Yeah, I just answered. We think 40 to 50 is really it's difficult to manage, right? So you might have 800 contacts, and those 800, everyone might get a Christmas card. So you kind of have that exercise of kind of putting them in buckets. The top 40 or 50, which are your high priority ones, those are the ones that you're going to engage with monthly or, more, bi-weekly. They're the ones that you're really going to be engaging with often. So those we think 40 or 50 is the most you can really manage effectively at all. And anything more than that, you're just not going to. And then you might have this big chunk they get a newsletter from your firm or they get a Christmas card, but those are not what we call meaningful touches. But thank you, Tracy.
And I would add to that list is going to change over time. It's like that Fortune 500 list, how many companies were on the Fortune 500 in 1980 that are still on, and right. So you might have a core group of people that stays with you for a long, long time, but right, number 35 to 40 might change every 6 months.
And that kind of going back to who do I know, everything's in flux. And so the most important thing we think to really constantly, be flexible and change and be effective to the people that you know in your network is to really be asking yourselves periodically, doing that evaluation. Am I being meaningful? Do I know enough people to be helpful in these areas? Do I know with whatever those external threats? Is there more information that I need to get comfortable with in order to be more helpful? Who are some of those experts that I need to start engaging with in order to be helpful? Add them onto the list. Who are some people that are just not, they're not interesting anymore to me. They're not, there's no ROI here. There's nothing happening. It's just kind of a dead. But before you make that determination, you have to really kind of take a hard look at yourself and say, have I been bringing what I need to bring to this relationship before you take them off the list? And if the answer is yes, and the relationship is just kind of stagnant, then it's really not a priority anymore. And you need to kind of shift it down on the list. Anyone else have any questions?
So my other question would be, are there best practices in terms of like follow up? Like, so if someone sends you an email, you need to respond within 24 hours, or is it better to take a week, but have a more thoughtful response? Is there any kind of gauge that you have there?
I think
This is why Dorothy and I are good partners, because we're going to give you two different answers.
I think you immediately, like, I'm a big believer in, I don't think anyone should ever leave. We'll even start from the very beginning. Every interaction you have, you should have some kind of goal for, whether it's getting to know them better, whether it's finding an answer to a question. I need to know if they have kids. I need to know if they're happy in their job. I need to know what attorneys they use, whatever. There has to be a goal. Before you leave a meeting or a phone call, there has to be a next step that you kind of identified with the person you're speaking. What is that next step going to be? What is that next action item that both of us are going to take? So I'm a big believer in kind of a what we heard follow up, not just a thank you, but kind of, it was great seeing you. This is what we talked about. If you need an additional week or a month for a thorough response, I think you write back within 24 hours with the promise of, I know we discussed, I would do the following. I'm going to get back to, as we discussed, I'll get back to you in 2 weeks with that information, and then expect a call from me on Wednesday. Because, what we found with a lot of our clients anyway, they might continue to see people and see the same people, and the relationship never really advances. And we suspect it's probably because there wasn't a goal initially for the meeting, and then they didn't, with the contact that they met with, they didn't kind of come to an agreement as to what was going to take place next. And even if it is a yes, let me look into that, or do you want to review T's and C's on this contract, or let me check with someone else like my CFO and get back to you, there should be something, there should be a next step that kind of comes through in that follow-up letter. And then if you need more time, that should also be, I'll get back to you in a few weeks with further information. That's how we'd handle it.
I would add on to that it depends. That who's the person asking you that question, right? Are they the kind of person that really expects immediate response of, I don't know the answer now, or I have the answer now, or if I don't know it, I'll get back to you in 3 days or a week or whatever. Or are they the person that would rather get one succinct email with the answer, not 2 emails, one saying, I heard your question, I'll get you the answer, and a second email saying, here's the answer. And as far as timing goes, again, it really depends. I think it depends a lot on who's asking and what the nature of the question is, right? Because there are some things that if you, like my view, personal view, is that if you are providing a complex service or a complex product, and somebody says, well, how much does it cost? And you answer right away, they might think you don't understand what they're asking, right? Because you need to qualify that, right? And so it might be the situation where they want you to take your time and think about it and, right, really evaluate the answer and get something back to them that's meaningful rather than fast. But it really is, I think, I don't disagree with Dorothy. I would say that, right, always leaving a meeting, leaving a phone call, leaving an interaction with what's the next step, that's the most critical part.
And also, how do you want to be, I think the other thing is kind of to Jim's point, how do you want me to engage? Like, how do you want to be communicated with? Some people hate email because they get 5,000 emails a day. And it's like, let's reschedule, let's call a schedule to reconvene and discuss this in a week. It can't be discussed in email anyway, and it wouldn't be inappropriate. So I think it's always really important with anyone to kind of get that confirmation or affirmation that they want to be communicated to and with in a certain way. Anybody else?
So these what we're doing right now, this exercise is really great. I do a lot of networking. I have one group. I work in telecommunications. Actually, let me start over. My name is Ian Horowitz. I'm an old high school friend of Dorothy, and I saw this pop up on Facebook and thought it was another great opportunity to network. And I'm based here in the Philadelphia region. I don't know where everybody else is, but I'm actually, right now, I'm sitting from my mother's house, 100 steps to the beach. So it's, but you know, it's, for me, I've done a lot of networking, and we started out with, like, I think there's 19 people in this call right now, in this Zoom session. I started something 2 months ago with a friend of mine. It was just folks in telecommunications. There were 12 of us on the call, and we started meeting every like Wednesday at noon. And next thing you know, it got up to like 100 people. So we started having, you know, maybe 5 different people do a quick elevator pitch for 2 to 5 minutes about their company, what they do, and how we can start networking with each other. It seems to me this group right now in this Zoom, we all have a different diverse background in what we do. And it'd be kind of cool if we started doing this weekly, bi-weekly, because I do this with a few other groups right now. I personally am out of work right now. I lost my job at the end of February for the tech. I was working for a company based in Hong Kong. I do fiber infrastructure, and there's a mess over there. But so one of the groups I'm in is about 20 of us, 28 of us. We're all out of work, and we're all sending leads to one another. We actually just created a brainstorming group in LinkedIn, and we're all sharing a lot of information on that. And, you know, so it's just, you know, I agree with what both Dorothy and Jim are saying, that it's just so important to be networking, whether you're currently working or you're out of work. And it's just, you know, it's never ending. You don't want to stop. And just because we're in a pandemic, you know, we should have been doing this before. And if we haven't, you know, you absolutely want to continue to grow your contacts, because you never know, you know, if you need a lawyer, if you need a doctor, if you need a real estate agent. You know, it's great to know a lot of folks and diversify all your contacts.
Thank you, Anne.
Sure.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Dorothy and Jim, Tom Donahue here. I have a question about when you're going into the work week or the month, how do you balance the portion of your time that you put towards building your network versus the portion of time you should put towards benefiting your network?
Good question. Jim, you take that one. You're
Yeah,
in
I'll tell you, I guess my short answer is I look at a pipeline, right? So what are the projects, the pending projects, the pending opportunities, right, that are kind of floating around in various stages, and I'm gonna decide month to month, probably not week to week, but more month to month, about how I want my team, how I want myself, like how should we be spending our time, as far as, right, do we have enough work in the pipeline? If so, then I want to spend more time getting out and developing. The caveat there is, you know, if I'm assuming that, you know, like me, you have folks who deliver the work that you go out and get. And as long as you trust those folks and you have a solid team around you that can carry that work forward and deliver it, then that's my short answer.
I think, you know, my answer is a little bit different in the sense, and it kind of goes back to something Jim said earlier. We deal with a lot of professionals who are in very episodic practices. Like if you're an M&A attorney, you can get, you know, very busy at different times. If you are a high net worth wealth, but there's different times of the year or different times that might be very unpredictable, some more predictable than others. When you're very busy, you kind of get sucked in that vortex. So for us, the key is kind of sustainability and making sure you're doing certain things in terms of growing the network that is also going to be driven by where you want to take your company, your clients, your network, your practice, is going to drive where you need to go. And as long as you're measuring and continuing to measure the success of those activities. So part of it is looking at and saying, where do I need to be and what are the things I need to do and how much at a bare minimum can I afford to do every single day, every single week, every single month? Because when you do get busy, the business development for acquiring new relationships always falls. or you take certain relationships that you've had, you know, you've been afforded a close relationship. Sometimes you take them for granted and you lose sight of them and you're not continuing to be impactful. And so we're really big believers in really kind of almost creating a schedule for yourself where you're really spending a specific amount of time on developing those new relationships and identifying how you're going to do that, and then how you're going to engage with the existing one. So it's not an exact answer, but.
Yeah, very helpful. Good advice and counsel.
Thanks, Tom. Well, I know we went over a little bit, but I know Jim and I really appreciated having all of you guys spend part of your afternoon with us. Hopefully this was helpful. And we encourage all of you, if you guys want to ask us any questions about business development, it's a topic that we happen to really enjoy. So feel free to reach out to us anytime, and we love talking about it. So if we can be of help to any of you, we encourage you to reach out.
Thank you.
And Venture Cafe, you guys have been just fabulous for allowing us to participate in this amazing organization and this outreach that you guys do every Thursday. So for some of you who have not done this before, there is an array of topics that Venture Cafe puts on, and they're all different topics. There's all different people from all different walks that join every Thursday to do this. And Natalie and Tracy have just done such a great job in what you do every day. And we thank you, because you're such an inspiring part of our business community that we really need right now. So thank you.
Thank you.
This is my first time hearing about Venture Cafe, so I'll definitely get involved with it.
I'm glad you found us because of Dorothy. So that's great. Those relationships from, you know, years past coming to fruition.
It's so true. And I just, I pasted a link to today's agenda in the chat. And this is actually where our agenda lives each week. So if anyone wants to check out any of the other sessions we have taking place this evening, please feel free to click on that link. And thank you, Dorothy and Jim, for an awesome presentation and for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you as well. Have a good day.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care.